and welcome back to the Nail It program. In this video, we will be learning about hazards and risks. Now, this is a very simple section. It's just about it's a bit of practical skills. It's going to help you a lot in your practical skills, and it's basically more or less the signs you need to know when you work in a lab. So the first thing we're going to learn about is the definition of a hazard. So a hazard is anything which may cause any form of potential harm or damage. And a risk is very closely associated with a hazard. A risk is basically, a risk is the probability of a hazard causing damage when exposed to it. So what this basically means, this is the definition that you do need to learn, but what this actually means is that when you are exposed to the certain hazard, when you are facing the certain place where the hazard may take place, the probability of the actual hazard causing any form of harm or damage is called a risk. So when the hazard is there, how likely it is that the hazard will cause harm or damage is basically the risk. Now, number 3. So symbols are universal. This means that every single person around the world, all forms of scientists, will be using the same type of symbols, and they will mean more or less the same thing. Now, what's the effect of the symbols becoming universal? First of all, it encourages safe working procedures. So when you're working with certain chemicals, or you're working in a certain environment during your experiments, it encourages safe working procedures. It encourages you to work safely, and it also prevents and awares of the harm and damage. So it basically, it's a form of precaution. So it just identifies the hazard, it makes a person aware of the hazard, and it prevents the likelihood of a person causing damage or harm due to the hazard. Now, these 3 steps are very, very important that you do memorize, and this is because, say for example, if there is a 3-mark question which comes up saying, what is the purpose of hazard symbols, then this is the best way to structure your answer. Now, here are a few of the symbols, or basically all the symbols that you do need to know for your GCSEs. When it does come up, you need to explain them, you need to give examples of them, and you do need to identify them too. So the first symbol is oxidizing. How can you remember this? Well, there's fire, and what is causing the fire? And O. O stands for oxygen. So that means that the certain thing is oxidizing. An example of an oxidizing material is liquid oxygen. Now, what does oxidizing mean? Oxidizing basically means when the certain material or chemical, it provides oxygen, and this allows other things to burn more fiercely. So it causes a certain thing which has catched a flame, caught a flame, to burn and be on fire even more. And the second symbol is highly flammable. So a highly flammable substance is something which catches fire easily, and an example of a highly flammable substance is petrol. Fuels do catch fire very easily, which is why there are so many hazards that you may be exposed to in a petrol station. Number 3 is harmful. So a harmful substance is a substance which may cause irritation, it may cause reddening or blistering of the skin. Now, an example of harmful is, for example, bleach. Bleach has a harmful symbol. If you do go to your toilet and check out the bleach container, you will see that it contains a harmful symbol in the instructions or the information at the back of the container. Not telling you to go to the toilet and check it out, but just making you aware. What is this, number 4? Number 4 is an environmental hazard. Now, an environmental hazard is something which is harmful to the organisms and to the environment. How can you remember this? You can see a tree and a fish. It's very, very easy. All this means is that it's an environmental hazard and it may harm organisms, which represents the fish, and the environment, which represents the symbol of the tree. Now, an example of an environmental hazard is mercury. And number 5 is corrosive. Now, the corrosive symbol basically means that it destroys materials, including living tissues. So it destroys all forms of materials, and it also destroys living tissues. For example, it could be your eyes and your skin. An example of a corrosive substance can be anything such as a concentrated acid. It could be concentrated hydrochloric acid, concentrated nitric acid, concentrated sulfuric acid. They all have extremely low pHs, they're extremely acidic, and they are highly corrosive, so they are very, very dangerous. I would say that out of the 6 symbols, this would be the second most dangerous. It causes the most immediate impact. Now, this is the last symbol. It is the most dangerous, and I'm sure all of you would know what the symbol means. It means death, and the symbol is toxic. Now, toxic obviously basically means that it can cause death. It does cause death if you swallow it, if you breathe it in, or even if it absorbs through your skin. Now, toxic substances, you won't usually find them inside your lab, but this is the sign that you do need to know in case you do anytime handle a toxic substance. So an example of a toxic substance is hydrogen cyanide, and they're extremely dangerous. You should stay far, far away from these substances.
If you eat toxic, then will it make you die?
Yes, it would. Back to our last and final part of this video. We're going to be learning about experiments. What are the risks associated with the experiment? So you're going to learn risks in a bit more depth. Now, in an experiment, the risks associated with the certain experiment, or the risks that could occur, are involved in 2 things. First of all, the equipment. Second of all, the chemicals. This is why you need to plan your experiment. Now, how do you plan your experiment? You need to identify certain hazards. You need to identify how likely it is these hazards will cause harm, so the risk of them, how serious the harm or damage could be, and finally, how would you reduce these hazards? Now, all 4 of these elements altogether make something called your risk assessment. So a risk assessment involves these 4 factors. And that's it for today's video. It wasn't really that hard, and if I didn't explain something properly, please do mention it in the comments below. I haven't done videos for quite a while now because I've been so busy, and hopefully I will upload more soon. So if for any reason you didn't like this video, do explain why, because it is a learning process for everyone. And thanks for watching.